3, 4.
We just live right now, man. It's going down, excited for the season. You know, we coming off a playoff win. I mean, you know, we had a couple wins.
Hello, and welcome to Deer Diaries, a Milwaukee Bucks podcast presented by us, the staff of Brew Hoop, or should I say, presented by me, Riley Feldman, an ex-staff of Brew Hoop, the emeritus former staff of Brew Hoop, former overlord, former co-overlord, I guess is the proper term. I'm joined this evening by Mitchell Maurer. Mitchell, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. How are you doing, Riley?
I'm doing well. I'm excited for this. We're putting together a season preview series of podcast interviews with all the staff of Brew Hoop and from beyonds, both from the former staff contingent, which you are a leading component of, and the other podcasterati around the world for the Milwaukee Bucks. So I thought when I'm thinking preparing for the season ahead, who's thinking critically, who's spending the few free moments that he has considering the path of the young Bucks forward to lead us to glory. Who's that guy? It's Mitchell is the guy. So I rang him up and he was happy to come on and help us out. So thank you, Mitchell.
Too happy. I will say this for everybody listening, Brew Hoop is still the first site I open in my browser every morning because I have a sickness and I don't know what the cure is.
I would rather, I don't know if we want sickness to be associated with the site, but we appreciate it. I do have to ask. So you're now, let's all be honest, you have SB8 Nation next to your name when you comment. You got that going for you. But now that you're a reader, primarily of the site, do you spell it Brew Hoop with a space still, or have you fallen into just combining it into one?
No, I have standards. Of course it has the space. That's the whole... Look, Frank Madden did not pour all the time he poured into the site to have us just disregard the space. Like, it's too important.
Okay. I just like, if there was a way we could introduce a bot into the comment section. And again, I understand people type in Brew Hoop, all one word, in the URL when they're getting to the site. So that's like the logic I think of. But yes, whenever I'm reading or somebody comments that they do Brew Hoop together, I can't help but do the Brew Hoop with the asterisk just to, just to remind people what the situation is. So
it's a requirement. I'm sorry to say.
It's a good thing you haven't fallen too far away yet from the heights of being the overlord of the site. But I'm here to have you and pick your brain about the season to come, 2024, 2025. A lot of different questions. We're going to go through the standard set of questions that I will run through for all interviewees, and then we'll hop into miscellaneous, which I will tell people. Very exciting for this edition. I recommend you stay until the very end. But let's go right into it, Mitchell. First question for you. Which new Buck are you most intrigued by heading into this season? Could be a free agent, could be one of the draft picks, could be one of the two-way guys. If you're feeling really sick this evening, it's completely up to you.
Gary Trent Jr. has a ton of promise, and I actually wrote a thing about him in July because, again, I can't quit. It's a dependency. But I would be lying if I said anybody other than AJ Johnson. So I played in adult rec league a couple of months back, and let me be very, very clear. My team was horrible. Absolutely, abjectly horrible. I'm 37, and I was easily one of the youngest people on the team by multiple decades. So that lets you know how good I am as a GM. And I averaged more points than AJ Johnson did in the NBL down in Australia. So we don't have a ton that we've seen from him besides a couple of offseason highlights in Summer League. But from what we have seen, he just gets it. There's something about his approach to the game. He just has that preternatural feel for basketball. He's just so much natural talent, a great frame, despite the fact that he's super duper skinny. And that's going to be one of the biggest obstacles he has to get past in order to be a pro for an extended amount of time. But just excellent tools. He's constantly playing. Like, he's a hooper. He hoops. A hooper who hoops. That's what he is. That's why he went to Australia, is because he wanted to focus on basketball instead of going through the NCAA, which former Buck from the 2009 draft, who also went international instead of going through college, Brandon Jennings, did something similar. Brandon Jennings was a similar style of hooper. And so I think his floor is relatively low, which most late first round picks are going to have that. But his ceiling is really, really high. Like, I think it's high to the point that in the year 2030, which sounds like a fake year, but in 2030, which is only about 5 years away, I think AJ Johnson could be that like all-star bubble caliber of player. If everything goes right, if his body gets right, and he gets the opportunities to develop, because he's just that good. So I can't say anybody besides AJ Johnson for who's the most intriguing.
Now, 2 quick follow-ups. Do you have any inkling, any feeling as to whether or not he's going to have an impact this season at all? Or like, what do you envision his role being this season? Probably, I would guess minimal, but I'll let you pontificate. Yeah. And then 2, you've watched a lot of guys develop, like with the Bucks, with other teams in the NBA. What's like a realistic in your mind timeline to think, okay, now we can start expecting things of him on like an actual consistent basis?
Yeah. Starting shooting guard. No, I'm playing with you. That's like, absurd. That's insane. There's no way that's gonna happen.
Gary Trent Jr. gets beat up by a 160-pound rookie. We got deep problems if that's the situation. I gotta say.
No, he's not going to play a major role this year. I do hope that at least for the first half of the season that they prioritize getting him minutes, just to get him the ability to develop on the court against grown NBA competition, because he's gonna have take his licks sooner or later.
Yep.
And so finding a way to get him like 12 minutes a game here and there across maybe 3/4 of the first half of the season. So like 30 games, 12 minutes. How's that math add up? That's like 350, 360 minutes. Like, it's not a lot. It's definitely not a lot. But you can see flashes of what a guy has in that amount of time. I want to say, I don't really remember exactly clearly, but I want to say like Thon Maker, his rookie season had a similar, like they played him here and there, but we were able to see flashes, which was a lot of fun. And so, no, I don't think that there's any way to expect anything of him besides being a deep reserve by like the end of the season. He's not going to be in the playoff rotation or anything like that. In terms of when we can start expecting things from him, like if you look at the conversation around Marjon Beauchamp right now, where he's starting his 3rd year, right?
Yep.
And we expect things from Marjon Beauchamp, and everybody is, disappointed in what we've seen from him so far, from a relatively lackluster summer league where you wanted to see him play one way and he played a different way and not consistently great at it. But that's because of the expectations of somebody with his pedigree, with his background, with his frame. You want him, by the time he hits that 3rd year, to be able to at least make a credible attempt at cracking the rotation. So I would say in 3 years' time, or I guess, no, if he's starting his rookie year. So in about 2 years' time.
2 years' time. Yep.
I think that backup point guard is a distinct possibility. Dame will be 35 at that point. So, and he obviously is the type of guy who can play on or off ball, I think, given his fluid game. I think that's probably the timeline that I would put him on. So if he can accumulate as many minutes as possible his rookie and sophomore seasons, that's going to put him in prime position to make his break for any sort of like consistent NBA role. And if it does work out, then all of a sudden that's a major shot of youth and athleticism that the team has sorely needed for a long time, and could be a really, really nice bridge player, as Giannis, who's crossing the age 30 season this year. I think it's December is when he turns 30. To kind of go into that next phase of his career, as long as everything else goes according to plan. So I've got irrationally high hopes for AJ Johnson.
I think it's so interesting, all these young guys that come through. So we have these expectations from Marjon because 1st round pick, you had this weird path to the NBA. You think, okay, maybe there's a little bit of something not fully uncovered there. I think it's very easy for fans, understandably, to see a team that's contending and draft a young guy, even in the late round, and still have these expectations, and how difficult it is for any team based off of where you're picking. And then to find that balance between, like, you're a young guy, you're with a bunch of vets, the odds of you having any role at all are almost non-existent. So then you have to hope like the development staff knows what they're doing, the head coach has to find this balance now with the G League of like, how much time do you spend here? How much time do you spend in Oshkosh? And then, like you said, okay, year 3, now we're coming into, this changing dynamic. Dame is getting older. How does that work out? How's that like handing of the baton? So I think there is a lot of reason, like you said, to be excited for it. I think I wrote the day after they drafted him that like, this is the pivot to whatever Giannis 2.0 looks like. Like if this hits, you can kind of see the vision of what it would look like down the road. But it's obviously, as Marjan has shown, as a lot of different guys have shown, it's extremely hard to take whatever that next step is. The upside for him is he's so young and he seems to have so much preternatural skill that it's not like Marjan where it's like, oh, he's already 21 and you kind of think there's something there, but you're not sure. It feels like there's a lot more there and still to be formed with AJ Johnson, which is a great thing.
Yeah, there's just a lot more of a blank slate with somebody that's as young and as raw as he is, but still displays that much talent. Whereas, not to pile on Marjan, because I do think he still has a decent shot at, turning himself into a rotation-worthy NBA player. For Marjan, it's all between the ears, how he approaches his opportunities, what decisions he makes with the ball, how he executes with what's best for the team instead of, playing like the guy. Like if this team wasn't contending, that would be fine.
Mm-hmm.
He could definitely try his hand in it, and that would not be a problem. But it's not. AJ Johnson seems to be capable of kind of just naturally filling whatever space exists on the floor on offense. And then on defense, he's super duper skinny, so he's going to get bodied by dudes all the time. But he's quick, he's feisty, he tries, which is all you can really ask for a 19-year-old. And, and we'll see what happens. But yeah, I've got very, very, very high hopes for him.
Okay, let's stick on the topic of young bucks. So the next question in the line here, young buck, i.e. one with 3 years or less experience, who will have the greatest impact on this season. The group that you will be picking from includes the aforementioned AJ Johnson, AJ Green, Andre Jackson Jr., Chris Livingston, Marjan, and Tyler Smith. Of course, again, you could pick one of the two-way guys if you like, but being realistic, it's probably going to be one of those 6. So which of those do you envision have the greatest impact on this season?
In my heart, I want it to be Andre Jackson Jr., but in my head, it's AJ Green. And I turned this question over a fair amount ever since I got a chance to think about it. And the answers, those options came to me pretty quickly, which I think tells you something about the skill sets they offer compared to, AJ Johnson, raw, Tyler Smith, super raw, Chris Livingston showed a lot of really promising signs in summer league. Then there's definitely an NBA athlete there. Like
Yep.
he looks the part and he plays the part. We'll see. Ditto for Marjan. He looks the part. Whether or not he plays the part is entirely up to what he does with the opportunities. But I pretty quickly settled on deciding between AJ Green and Andre Jackson. And then I kind of put the question to myself, with young players on a contending team, there's 2 things, and they have to be answered in succession. What gets you on the floor? And then once you're there, what keeps you on the floor?
Mm-hmm.
Both guys have an answer to the first part. Andre Jackson is this like super weird, hyper athletic, connective piece who's like a really canny passer, good cutter, outstanding athlete, really feisty defender despite the sky high foul rates. So like you can see why he would get opportunities. AJ Green is a remarkably good outside shooter from a bunch of different actions, off movement, spot up, off the dribble, weirdly. And he's passable on defense. But what keeps them on the floor? With AJ Green, if the shooting is there, that's going to keep him on the floor. Even if Malik Beasley was a plus shooter last year and pretty awful on defense, despite his best efforts.
Mm-hmm.
And he was able to stay on the floor because that's what the team needed from him. AJ Green could do that same thing. He's a little bit more stout, not as good as an athlete as Malik Beasley, but we saw him keep up pretty well on defense.
Yep.
You can see that player staying on the floor when a team with actual stakes is playing games that matter. Andre Jackson Jr. doesn't have that because he's got this weird aversion to shooting relatively open shots near the rim. His outside shot, it performed well in games last season, but that stat might be a fluke. We don't know. Maybe,
Nope.
he has a decent shot, but it doesn't really look like it yet. And in the fouls, like I mentioned before, like there's so many things that could take him off the floor, or rather keep him from staying on the floor, because at his position especially, you've got, who is he competing for minutes with? Khris Middleton, who you know what you're going to get.
Yep.
Giannis, if they're going to play Ajax as a small ball power forward, like Giannis is the best power forward that the Bucks have ever had, and the best Buck that there's ever been. Taurean Prince,
yep.
who's a steady veteran. Like these are guys who are going to be able to excel in their role and not take away the things that Andre Jackson Jr., based on what we've seen so far, takes away. So in terms of overall opportunity to make an impact, a real impact, like I think that AJ Green has the shortest path to get there and the highest likelihood of staying there. So it may not be as exciting, but it's steady. And that's what you need from your contributors in that, 6 through 10 spot in the rotation. You need steady.
And I think there's also, if you do the same thing where who is he competing for minutes against, it's primarily like the Pat Connaughton role, which, Pat was looking a little iffy at the end of last season, didn't look excellent in the playoffs. Who knows where he's going to be? But that's just fewer people that he's going to have to compete against for that kind of extra guard spot, since DeLon Wright's presumably going to be the lead bench guard. So it just makes a little more sense. The follow-up is, do their relative nicknames sway it at all for you? Dairy Bird versus Ajax. Is there any preference for you on that?
I mean, I like Ajax better. Dairy Bird feels a little forced, but it is very funny.
It is funny.
So like you gotta take what you can with him. And
Lisa delivers the line too with a lot of verve. You gotta give her credit. She sticks with it, no problem. Yeah. And
that makes a difference. But with Ajax, like Ajax is a really cool nickname. Harkens back to some Greek mythological hero.
Yep.
Which is super cool. But then also like when you got Marcus Johnson like doing the recap of a really good highlight, and he gets into his mode, and Andre Jackson Jr. That's a lot of fun. And so
it is. Yeah.
So I mean, on that note alone, I might change my answer, but no, it's got to be AJ Green.
Okay. All right. We'll pivot from the young guys. We're going to go into rankings now. This is where the controversy can begin. We're going to have you start first with the less controversial question before you get to the second one. So 3 new free agent acquisitions. They did not make your most interesting Buck qualification. Doesn't mean they weren't second. They could have been second or third. But I want you to rank the free agent acquisitions, DeLon Wright, Gary Trent Jr., and Taurean Prince, in the essentially who will be most effective in the role that you envision them filling. I think we kind of have a sense for what role each guy is here to try and step in for, but I want your thoughts to rank most effective to least effective for the role that we expect them to fill this season.
That's a really hard question.
Well, I would hope so, because it's tough because you sent it to me. So this is actually your question that I'm asking.
See, I was hoping to like maybe sneak that in later, not off the bat. So now everything I say is going to come across not how I intended it. So thanks for that.
Sorry.
But the reason why I think it's interesting is that it's a sliding scale. Like what you expect from Gary Trent is different than what you expect from DeLon Wright is different than what you expect from Taurean Prince.
Yep.
So ranking who's going to be the most successful in that role, knowing the roles are different, and then kind of using last season's Bucks, who these guys are ostensibly replacing, as kind of the paradigm for what role you expect. So DeLon Wright's replacing Pat Bev. Taurean Prince is replacing Jay Crowder.
But say his name, Campaign. He's also replacing Campaign.
That's true. I don't want to commit Campaign erasure.
For sure. No, not on this podcast. Okay.
But DeLon Wright is definitely more on the Pat Bev spectrum than the Campaign spectrum of backup point guards. So that's right. Taurean Prince is replacing Jay Crowder, lol, and Gary Trent Jr. is replacing Malik Beasley as the presumptive starting 2 guard. And so those job descriptions are different. I do think that DeLon Wright is going to do a good job of being that ball handling, defense first guard that can, stick on the perimeter. You can switch him around here and there. Quick hands, really pesty. So you can do a lot with him. He's going to do that job really well. Taurean Prince is going to be infinitely better on offense than Jay Crowder was. I don't think he has the same bulk, the same strength. And so I do think he's going to be more perimeter than interior, which I think that matters in terms of defensive versatility. Jay Crowder's washed. So replacing that is going to be super straightforward. But I do think that my top option is actually going to be Gary Trent Jr., which even though he has the hardest job to fill, I think he's going to meet and clear that bar.
Yep.
I actually wrote a piece back in July because I had time unexpectedly, and so I just put together 3,000 words on Gary Trent Jr. for fun. He's a major ceiling raiser, and because of the diversity of his offensive game, like he's obviously a very capable three-point shooter and one of the best three-point shot makers when he's open. Very consistent when he has space, which is good. He's going to be able to do that well, but he also is pretty capable of putting the ball on the ground and getting to a shot inside the arc, like attacking a closeout or attacking a mismatch or something. He's a lot more rangy than most of the shooting guards the Bucks have had in the past. And so that just gives him a higher expectation of what they can do defensively. I don't know if the Gary Trent Jr. steals numbers are real or if they're an illusion of his time in Toronto, but he produced, to his credit, and he definitely competes. He's played a ton of minutes already as a young player over the course of his time in Portland and in Toronto. And so it's not so much that he's going to do so well in the job he's being asked to do. It's that he's capable of doing so much more, and he will get the opportunity to do so because the defense is also paying attention to Giannis, to Dame, to Khris Middleton. Brook Lopez is obviously going to command attention because of his mid-career transformation into a three-point shooter. Bobby Portis, even if he's playing with reserve lineups, like Bobby Portis commands a lot of attention from the defense because he's a really good offensive player. Mm-hmm. And so that amount of freedom and space, hopefully, that gives to a guy like Gary Trent Jr., I think is going to really wow people, like to the point where I think it's feasible, not likely, but it's feasible that he could be on a lot of nights the best third option the Bucks have.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if Khris Middleton is in any way, shape, or form limited, which he probably will be for certain parts. But he's that talented on offense, and he's playing with the gravity of Giannis inside and Dame outside. So I think Gary Trent has a chance, and I'm very hopeful that he does. A lot of optimism coming from me tonight. A lot of positivity.
Mm-hmm. Good.
I think he's got the chance of doing the best. After that, I would say DeLon Wright, because I think he's just a little bit more steady on offense than Pat Bev was. And then Taurean Prince, despite the fact that he's got the easiest job, I think it's just the most limited. And who knows? There could be a Pat Connaughton renaissance that makes Taurean Prince's minutes less impactful. It's possible.
I think it's good that Jay Crowder set us up for disappointment in terms of larger man rebounding, because Taurean is completely uninterested in rebounding the ball. So at least we're used to that. On the Gary Trent portion, interesting as well. I think it's very easy, kind of a lazy talking point to be like, oh, he's played with Dame. They know how to play with one another. But like, that does count for something. It's not a lot. And in his role, because of that specific lane, like you were saying, it's this weird, it's sort of like very straightforward what he's out there to do, but also complicated to know when to pick his spots, and having any sort of familiarity with the lead guard who's going to be doing a lot of the scoring himself goes a long way to ingratiating him, and maybe makes the season-long project of fitting him in, especially if he brings even a little bit on defense, fitting him in so that we're not getting to the end of the season like, wow, I really hope DeLon Wright's ready to become a starter with the final week of the season into the playoffs, because that's just what we got to do. So I think that's also promising in that the setup to the signing and his fitting in looks pretty promising on paper as well. So it was definitely a coup by John Horst and whoever else was getting in Gary Trent's ear. And as a lot of guys have shown, you come through here, you're the two guard, even for a season, who just shoots a lot, you have the chance to get paid elsewhere. So I think it's a very effective spot as well, because there's always guys who are shooters who are looking for a spot, and this is one that will constantly be open because it's just easy to find guys on minimums and convince them to come here. So absolutely. I think you're pretty much spot on. Yeah.
And I don't think Gary Trent Jr. is going to be here beyond this season, just because there's no way they're going to free up enough money to pay him what they'll be allowed to pay him under the new CBA.
Yeah. Unless, again, things go horribly wrong and AJ Johnson is taking his job by the start of the season. So,
now you mention
it. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Let's go to the second ranking question. This is the one that'll get the oohs and the ahs from the crowd. I want you to rank these players in terms of their importance to the season. Damian Lillard, Khris Middleton, Brook Lopez.
Okay, so the rest of the core. They're all 2. So let's be clear. You need all 3 of them in order to make something work. They're all in that second tier of importance after Giannis. So whether it's 2, 3, 4, or 2A, 2B, 2C, like I subscribe to the latter theory just because if one of them isn't at least getting to what you expect from them, like that makes it really hard for everybody else to keep up because the league has continuously improved so much that there's no cakewalk through the playoffs anymore. It's just not a thing. Okay, so in terms of importance, who can they? If all of a sudden this player wasn't available, like what would lower the floor the most?
Yeah, you have to kind of work backwards almost. Like,
I actually think it might be Brook. Might be
Adam would be so proud of you right now. When he listens to this, he's going to be so happy.
Hey, him and I have always seen eye to eye on things. Yeah. So many instances of that. But like game this out. Like he's the defensive anchor, obviously. Like Giannis is the best defender, but Brook's the anchor. The big man rotation is Brook, Giannis, Bobby, and that's it. Like I don't remember the name of the 2A center they signed, but he's not the guy. Tyler Smith isn't the guy. Like there is no fourth big. So, like, and Brook has since his back surgery, whatever they gave him, like he's been pretty spectacular. Not a world beater by any stretch, but like he's been great at his job. Mm-hmm. And I think that if you don't have Brook on the court, even for like he's not going to be a 30-minute guy. He's a 24-minute guy now, and that's fine. But if you don't have him for any minutes, like how does the team operate? How do they function on defense? Because like if you put Bobby in that spot, the defense is immediately downgraded. You've got no interior defense besides Giannis because Bobby's just not that guy. Offense will be pretty good, but then behind him, there's nobody. If you put Giannis in that spot instead, then Giannis is playing center full time, which he's never wanted to do, and he's going to get banged up. And then, great, you've replaced Brook at the expense of getting Giannis all fatigued and worn down. You don't want that. No. So, I mean, so that's the case for Brook. The case for Dame is that he's the best ceiling raiser the team has by far. Best teammate Giannis. Like, all respect to Khris, all respect to Drew Holiday. Like, Damian Lillard is one of the best players who's ever suited up for the Milwaukee Bucks based on his career. Like, if he's a 26-6 guy and he fits with Giannis and Khris and he bends the defense because of his three-point threat, like, that's the defense breaking effect he can have. But if he wasn't available, he's also getting older. He's had some injury issues. Like, if you have Delon Wright filling in for him, the defense doesn't fall off as much. And as we've seen over and over and over again, like if you have a good enough defense, you can hang with just about anybody.
Yep.
So that's why I would put Brook above Dame. Khris, who I adore. I mean, he's a great like counter to everything Giannis does and everything Dame does. So he's the ideal third option. He calms the offense down. He's been clutch for years. If he's healthy and the wind is blowing in the right direction, his defense is above average. Not consistently, but it can be. And the team knows his history. But like you can plug in somebody else to fill in for Khris, and you're not going to be the same team, but you're not going to be missing as much as you'd be missing if you didn't have Dame and you didn't have Brook. Like if you put Pat Connaughton in that place or Taurean Prince in that place, no, it's not good, but it's less bad than the alternatives. So I think I'd have to go Brook as my A, Dame is my B, and Khris is my C, which doesn't feel right. But I don't know how to rank them otherwise.
I won't tip my own hand because I'm going to have, once these are all done, I'll have a decompressed session with Adam and Kyle so that we can kind of go through everything. But, I think both Dame and Brook are weird in that there's a sort of ambivalence, a sort of a weird feeling around both of them for different reasons. Brook, because he's been out there for so long and people, you kind of become, it's absence makes the heart grow fonder, or whatever the, what's the opposite phrase for it when you're just familiar with somebody for, familiarity breeds contempt. I wouldn't call it contempt per se.
It's getting close, if we're being honest.
It is. I think people are just like, and it did not help that Adrian Griffin went kind of crazy with it and said, what if we had Brook play like a completely different way defensively that would be a fit for him? So then people got extra frustrated with that, even though really it was the coaching rather than the player. But we saw with the season where Brook had the back surgery and had to come in late at the end of the season after healing from the surgery. Just wasn't the same with Giannis at center. He did not enjoy it. We tried so many different replacements, dude off the scrap heap to make it work. It just didn't work. So I understand. I do agree that as long as Brook is here, because he pins the defense in place, he's probably the most important to what the team is doing as an overall concept. And Dame, it's like you said, it's hard to remember. Oddly enough, a year later, like, hey, we got Damian Lillard on the team. Like, it's so it's just a very strange place to be with him.
Is that crazy?
It's very crazy. And I agree. Like, most people outside who don't watch the team super closely would say, well, obviously it's Dame 1. They could maybe make a discussion for Brook 2 or whatever, because I think there is enough knowledge about the role that he plays. But it's just this weird ambivalent feeling of like, well, how is he actually going to fit? Did he just need like a full summer off? Is he going to come into camp in shape? Shout out David Goggins. Is he what's that fit with Giannis? Like, it's just so many questions around Dame that it's hard to know, but that's why he could be the ceiling raiser. Because if it all goes well, the way we expected it to go last year, okay, that solves a lot of problems. That's like a great thing to have. So I think you're right to have those guys above. And Khris is just old reliable at this point. He's not old yeller, because that implies that we're gonna have to old yellow him at some point. But like,
which we'll never do. We will never do.
That will never happen. But like, or what? Name any other thing that's like very reliable. We'll just call it old reliable. Sure, that's that way.
That works.
We know what he does. He knows his fit. We saw last year the limited minutes that he had with the other guys. He can fit in. It's like none of this was really a question. The only real question is durability, and yes, how often is he able to elevate his defensive game? Otherwise, Khris has been Khris for so long that it's just like, this is what you expect from him. So
I will say this, in a parallel universe, because like I realize that putting Brook as more important than Damian Lillard is
go back like 6-7 years to previous Mitchell and say, hey,
oh man,
guess what we're going to be saying into the year 2024 leading up to the season.
that is an ayahuasca trip gone wrong. But if in an alternate universe, if the Bucks did move on from Brook Lopez and we had a different type of, like, I don't think that's Giannis at center is the option as the full-time option. Closing lineups, yes, but you have to have somebody else to eat your minutes over the course of the regular season. If you got a different type of center, like who's coming to mind? Like Mitchell Robinson is a different type of center than Brook, obviously. Like somebody who fills a different archetype that's definitely more mobile, more athletic, less skilled offensively. Like kind of that Tyson Chandler archetype from way back when. Like, obviously, if that was the case, Dame easily becomes the clear-cut number 1 and Khris is the clear-cut number 2. But like, everybody has their role. But the team didn't do that. The team kept Brook. They never moved on from him. There's really nobody in the pipeline that is gonna really be a replacement for him. Like, if Brook heaven forbid, got an injury, it would probably be Bobby Portis, but that's not gonna fly long term.
No.
You can get through a series that way in the right matchup, but you got to have Big Brook out there, and that's where we are right now. So, but it is weird to have to justify that over Damian Lillard and Khris Middleton.
The other thing to think about too is, like, again, God forbid any injuries happen to these guys, but if you have to find a replacement on an extremely short-term basis, finding a guard who can fill in on the bench because you promote DeLon Wright is a lot easier than, like, okay, we tried Serge Ibaka, we tried DeMarcus Cousins. Like, it's nigh impossible to find somebody who is playable, who is like a true 7-footer or 6'11". It's just hard to do. So I think all the factors kind of play into your ranking here, which I think is not that controversial, but
I would happily hear a case for either other permutation of those three and making Brook at the bottom. Like, I think there's a valid case to make, and I think that's because they're all similarly, not equally, but similarly important around Giannis. So that's why it's the core four. Like, those four guys work together when they're healthy, when they're playing the right way, when they're all clicking. Like, it can work. They need all of them.
Yep. Okay. Moving on to the next question here. Speaking a little bit more about the team as a whole, what do you think right now is the team's greatest weakness? Could be something on the court, could be something very micro, could be something macro. You're looking at the team, evaluating it, you say, okay, this thing still has me concerned about the season to come.
My answer for this is definitely very far away from X's and O's, purely in the realm of hyperbole and theoretical. Like, the biggest weakness is getting stale, which arguably they already have gotten stale, even with the Dame trade, which was transformative. It was. But we just spent this whole last segment talking about, like, Giannis as the center of the Bucks universe, and then Khris and Brook and Dame, previously Drew, previously Eric Bledsoe, how they all fit in around him and all the role players around them. Like, that's been the approach for the last 8 years. Like, when it was made clear that he was the guy and then became Giannis.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, the roster, it got younger. It's still an old roster when you look at the playoff rotation, the likely playoff rotation, where most guys are in their 30s already. Giannis will be in his be 30. I think Bobby's 29.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes it like Pat, Brook, Dame, Khris, DeLon Wright.
I think Gary Trent would be the only Taurean.
Oh yeah, he's 25.
Gary,
so he's the youngest one.
He's the young guy,
and that's great. I think that's also a huge plus in his favor for helping kind of keep the team afloat. But besides him, it's an old roster, and a lot of these guys have been around each other for a long time. Like, I think that when you get through training camp and everything's new and exciting, you do have new players that are coming by, and they offer a lot of new takes on similar job descriptions. Like, the overall approach is still the same. Like, I think Doc Rivers will do a decent job of adjusting and making changes to the schemes as the opponent dictates, instead of being not stubborn, but very stalwart like Mike Budenholzer was. Like, we're going to play our game and make them adjust no matter what, which won a championship and lost a bunch of other series.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because of how long they've been doing this for, like, after we get past that initial wave of good vibes, like, when we get to January, February, like, is this team going to scrap and claw and fight tooth and nail to eke out every single advantage they have and create margins where they're like, are they going to do that? It's an old roster. These guys have been around for a long time. I think it's reasonable to question whether or not they have that hunger. Like, it's a related dynamic to why it's so hard to win a championship, but that much harder to repeat.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think the same thing is facing the Celtics. Great team. I hate them. Great team. They did a great job last year playing who's in front of them, and they won a title. They were fantastic. Are they going to push themselves the same way to be able to repeat? Like, they can. Will they? It's hard to do. It's hard to push yourself like that so many different times. And so like you look at some of the other counterparts in the East, like the Pacers are going to try to do what they did last year, which was horrible to watch, probably even worse to be in. Like the Celtics are still like super, super good. Are they going to get short circuited because they can switch everything? Like the Knicks are clearly hungry. The Sixers think they have something else figured out. The Magic are an up and coming team. The Cavaliers have the ingredients of an up and coming team that I don't really believe in.
They're there.
But like they're there.
Mhm.
And just I think that is something that Doc Rivers is really going to have to manage very delicately, because I think it's going to be really easy for the team to kind of settle into a groove. And that's the difference between a 55-win season and a 51-win season. And it can be the difference between seeding 2 and 3, which can be the difference between home court advantage, which can be the difference in a game, which can swing a series. Like all these little pieces add up on each other. And so I think that's the biggest concern that I have, which is ironic because up until maybe last year, I was one of the most vocal supporters of John Horst's strategy of continuity. Like I didn't even firing Mike Budenholzer was probably the right call. Not that we have to relitigate that again, but
No, let's
like,
do that. Hold on, let's do that. Okay.
I can see a case to be made that they should have kept Bud. I don't think it was the right call. I think they're better off now with everything that's happened at this point. But like it's tough going for like just stay the course. But like if you stay the course too long, you don't have the time to course correct. And so this is what the Bucks are, barring some sort of crazy unforeseen trade like Damian Lillard last October. Like it could happen, and they might be fine. Like Giannis pushes these guys as hard as he pushes himself. Dame has got himself right. Like there's all sorts of signs that indicate that what I'm talking about isn't really a concern. I want to see it first.
And again, that's why Dame is so interesting, because the little bits, it wasn't perfect last season, but you can still see the differences, especially it's kind of the back half of the season when Doc came in, that 2-man game with Giannis, they were kind of going to a lot more deliberately, I think. So I think stylistically on offense, it's just a different approach. Like it's something new, it's something exciting. Hopefully it's something interesting for his teammates to have to work around. And also his own mentality. Like it's why I find interesting, he's had a couple of podcast appearances this summer where he's talked about like, oh, you know, people criticizing me for like my numbers dropping, but I've proved this, proved that. And it's like, it's true that he has proved what his skill set is, but I also wonder, it's like, well, where has he proved himself to be a winner at the highest level, fair or unfair, based off of his situation that he was in Portland? Like a lot of it does. Giannis got no concerns about if Dame does get himself in the right mindsets, and he's I think it's critical that he has a large hand on the direction of the team goes, just in a mentality sort of way, because yes, he has proven a lot in his career, but if we're trying to win the title, I mean, that's still unproven territory for him, which again should be interesting. It should be exciting. It should be a challenge that keeps things fresh when you're playing the Magic on the road on a Tuesday in February. Like that's kind of the difference makers throughout a season, then into the playoffs as well. But I think the way that the team has gone about constructing, yes, staleness is sort of something that will happen. Even just look at the defense, like we were saying, so long as Brooke is here, this is the defense you will play. Like there can be slight changes on emphasis, especially on perimeter defense, but for the most part, this is how you're going to play. That's one whole half of the court that's been decided for you for, what is this, year 5, year 6 now for Brooke?
Yeah.
At this point. So I understand where the staleness comes in, just because that's how you have to play, but there should be room for excitement internally as well, even though it is a long season. So we'll see if they're able to combat that.
I think you commenting on Damian Lillard really being at the center of that, because he wasn't in the same position to succeed last season as he is for this season. And I do think that legitimately could be enough to sway it in the right direction.
Yeah. And even just like he said, I completely believe him when he came in and said, look, I can't just show up. And it was very sweet and very honest for him to be like, this is Dame's team now. It's like, okay, I mean, that's the right thing to say. I'm sure. Well, you know, and in Giannis's mind, he's doing the good guy thing. I take him at his word that he thought that was like, oh, this is like a good idea, even if he
believed the words when he said it. 100%.
Exactly right.
And then when it came to tip, like Giannis was Giannis.
Mm-hmm. Well, so there's like saying it out loud, there's in practice, and then Dame did the proper thing. Like, look, that's absurd for me to like roll up in here and be like, this is my team now. But he has a little bit of cachet. He understands a little bit more. So I think there is, like you said, all the ingredients are in place. There should be less awkwardness about like what his fit is within the pecking order and like the organization. He's not like the new guy now. Okay, you're part of the team for real now. So let's clean the slate and go from there. So I think it's exciting, something to be concerned about, but also something to maybe be a little excited about. So
I'm looking forward to it either way.
Yeah, I'll be positive as well. Okay, speaking about things that'll keep you positive and things you want to look forward to, you are not obligated to watch 82 games plus of Milwaukee Bucks basketball anymore, but you do watch Bucks basketball. And when you tune in to those aforementioned Tuesday night games in Orlando, your Pacific time, so it's early in the evening for you, you know the team does not want to be there. But I wonder, what's something that the Bucks, or you hope to see the Bucks do this season, that would make it interesting for you? What are you looking for? It could be, again, micro, a certain player does X a lot more, or it could be macro. Is there something that would keep you coming back for more on those really cold, crappy nights of the NBA regular season?
I'll be honest, winning games is pretty cool. So if they just win a shitload of games.
That's a popular answer so far, I'll tell you.
That helps. Like, that helps a great deal. Like, it's one of those things that as fans, like, it shouldn't, but it does. Your evening and the next day after a win is just like, it's a little bit better than after a loss. It's just the weird effect of following a team far more closely than you need to. But more seriously, I do kind of divide the season up into phases. Like, I don't care about the in-season tournaments. I don't even care that much about playoff seeding. It matters, but it's not what I look forward to here in September. I think the early phase of the season, I want to see the young guys play. I want to see the young guys get minutes. I want to see what they have. Because sooner or later, like, especially if Doc Rivers is going to be around for longer than this season, which I have no reason to expect him not to, you got to have at least one of these guys become a rotation level player, if not more. So, like, I want to see AJ Johnson thrown out there to see if he can remain standing against guys that weigh twice as much as him, but still somehow move as fast. I want to see if Tyler Smith can play, and maybe it's not until garbage time, but I want to see what he can do on this stage versus the summer league stage. I want to see, like, what Ajax's deal is. Is he able to play in the flow of the game and also make the right decision when he does have the ball, not just when he doesn't have the ball? Because he's great at the hard stuff. Some of the easy stuff he's not. Like, I want to see him take those steps to be able to be a rotation level player. Like, Chris Livingston getting minutes would be great. Marjon getting minutes would be fine, I guess. I am kind of over Marjon, and part of it is very unfair because social media doesn't really affect how you play, but like Marjon's social media kind of does sort of affect how he plays because
it's true.
He thinks he's the chosen one.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
it's literally in the bio. Man. It's in the bio.
It is, and like, he's religious. That's cool. I'm not. I'm not trying to compare that, but also, you gotta be a garbage man on the court. You can't be the guy because it's not working out. But all that aside, all the smirk aside, like, he's a legitimate player who could become an NBA rotation player. And I really want to see that. That's the sort of thing that I'm really interested in seeing. You know, separate from all the big, actually important things that we've seen. You know, the Giannis Dame pick and roll, if Khris can hold up, how well Brook holds up, the young guys. And then in the later phase, so like after the All-Star break, that's really when I want to see them have a tone shift. I want them to, the way I wrote this out in my notes is I want them to play each game as if it's game 5 in a tied series. Mm-hmm. It's not the end-all be-all. It's not win or go home. But you don't experiment to just learn what won't work. You figure out what's going to give you the best chance to win, to get an advantage, which is what you need to move on to the next round. That's what I want to see. I want to see them just – I don't care if they win by 2 points for 2 weeks straight, as long as they win and they did things that translate into playoff mode. That's what I really want to see. I'm gonna be tuning in anyway. I can't stay away from it. I'm like a moth to a flame. But
Yep.
if they can go through and show me that, I think that'll really make it continue to be interesting.
So I've got you right. You want something more than an ephemeral youth movement, something that's a little more concrete than that in the first half of the season. And then the back half, you want something more than an aw shucks attitude when they take the court and are like, oh, if we win or lose, it's all good.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out.
The aw shucks maybe works when it's the young guys that are getting more minutes than they've perhaps earned at that point. But like after February comes around, like I really want to see them give a shit consistently.
Mm-hmm. You and me both. Makes watching them and analyzing them a lot more interesting. Yeah, fingers crossed, double fingers crossed. Okay, let's go into the playoffs. This will be relatively quick one. In order for the Bucks to win a title this year, they must blank. And I'm going to preface this by asking everybody to say something other than win 16 games. I like the wits that everybody will naturally go for, but I will be asking more of my illustrious guests than that.
All right. So in order to win the title, they must win 4 consecutive 7-game series.
There you go. Yeah, okay.
There we go.
All right. Thanks for joining, Mitchell. It's been a great podcast. Yeah, there you go.
Or maybe another cop-out answer, stay healthy. Like, it really and truly is so important, but, like, they're not going to win the title if they're not healthy. Like, maybe they can have a short-term absence from one of their main guys, but it's a big maybe.
Yep.
No, I mean, this isn't the buzzsaw Budenholzer Bucks that we saw in 2019, 2020, 21. Like, this is not that team anymore where they can go out there and rip off, like, 15-2 runs when they put their foot down and decide this is what we're doing. We're just going to win this game now. Bye. That's not who this team is anymore. They need to exploit every margin that they possibly can. Like they need to play scrappy. They need to be gritty and just every single possible sliver of an advantage they need to leverage. And they need to do that against every single opponent that they play. Like they can't. I don't think that they did do this. I don't think most teams do this, to be honest, in the playoffs. But like when it's game 1, you can't think about game 2. Like it's game 1. What does it take to win game 1? And then onward to 2. What does it take to win game 2? And then all the way through until you're like, oh, we won the 4th one? Okay, back to game 1 against this other opponent. What do we have to do? Like I adore Coach Bud's approach to like building good habits and playing a certain way. Like I think it's a great life philosophy, and it did work. Like I'm not taking anything away from the guy; it worked for him. But I don't think this team can be successful that way. I think they need to be, and that takes a lot of energy, a lot of bandwidth. They have to be hyper focused when April rolls around, even if it is. If they do super well and they get a high seed and end up playing like, the injury-riddled Philadelphia 76ers because, of course, like I still want to see them just use the most precision and focused energy they can to winning every quarter. Like I want them to win every quarter of every playoff game that they play and operate that is the metric of success that they're judged by. I think that's the only way that this type of Bucks team is going to be able to get all the way to the finals and win.
It's a high standard, but it's one that they should be able to meet. This group of players.
They're capable of it. I think there's very few teams that are capable of it. Boston, yes. Milwaukee, yes. I really don't believe in any of the other teams in the East yet. I think there's cases to be made, but I haven't seen it yet. Denver, yes. Denver can do it. I'm trying to think. Not the Lakers, not the Warriors, not the other big name. So, like, what other West teams are out there that can do it? I didn't see it from Minnesota, not yet. They could do it, but I haven't seen it.
The Kings? Yeah. LOL.
I'm sorry. Just kidding. I am a big fan of my hometown Kings, but I think that the DeMar signing was a misguided attempt to stay relevant, and I don't think it's going to end well for them, and that's sad.
Yeah, I think boiling it down to the level of focus, I agree, and that's what's exciting about it too. Is as wide open as the NBA is, against all odds, against very recent history of the Bucks bowing out in pretty bad fashion for the past 2 seasons, they are still making the extremely short list. I understand other outlets being like, I don't know. I mean, the team didn't really give them a lot to go off of last season, so I really can't get mad if the Bucks are made underdogs. But I think conceptually, yes, like they're on that extremely short list of the possible teams that, when you're looking on paper right now, can get there. So,
and that's the upside of the whole continuity thing that I was talking against before. Like, you do have you can fall back on, we have proved it, right? And like, there's only a handful of teams that have proved it in recent years. Like, the Pacers haven't proved it. They beat the Bucks fair and square. They can do that. The Heat, same deal. But they didn't prove they can get all the way through the East and win the finals. Only a few teams have done that.
Yep. And that are still in a position to be within that conversation. It's like,
right,
like you said, us, Celtics, and Denver are like recent champions who are still within the mix, realistically speaking. So, you know, it's not worth nothing. It is worth something. So I think it's something to keep an eye on. I will then finish with the final question here. It's the least fair of them because you have no idea. You can't see into the future. None of us really knows, but we're here. We're going to prognosticate. I'm going to ask you to predict, not the record because I'm not that cruel, but what would you predict the teams finish in the East this year, and then how far they go in the playoffs?
Okay. I think they'll end with the 3 seed because I think that there's other teams in the East that are going to win more games in the regular season and have a higher seed as a result of that. And again, that's age. Like, I think that there's going to be enough games that Giannis sits, or that Dame sits, or that Khris sits, sometimes more than one of them. And that's going to be enough for an opponent to take a game that otherwise could have been an easier victory. And so I think, plus, the sure to come growing pains of making it work on the court between Dame and Giannis and Khris, because, they did a lot of good things last year, but it hasn't worked yet, not consistently. So I think the 3 seed is probably where they end up. Again, I've been very positive this whole episode. I do think they can make it to the NBA Finals. I really do. I don't see, barring injury, it's always the big caveat, right? And it sounds like a cop-out, but like, they haven't lost a series when they've been actually healthy. Like, even in the bubble, which they did get embarrassed, Giannis was also hurt for a big chunk of that Heat series. So, like, both are true, that they weren't healthy and they got outclassed. It's the same for the Pacers. Even if Giannis was healthy, I think they would have beat the Pacers. He wasn't. And as a result, they got punked. Well, I don't know if 6 games counts as being punked, but like, the Pacers won that series. You can't deny it. But I think that with Giannis at his best, Dame at this version of his best, with Khris, with Brook, with the role players that they've added, like, they've really reinforced the middle of the roster. Like, all they really need is to make sure that they don't have, a Jimmy Butler going nuclear over Drew freaking Holiday, and they should be able to win 4 out of 7 against just about anybody. And I do even include Boston in that. I don't think it'll be easy. And I think that, Boston fans are going to listen to this and be rightfully indignant about being dismissed just after winning the title. Like, yeah, we have Giannis. You guys don't. Like, Jason Tatum's great. Jaylen Brown is great. Well, they're not Giannis. You all know that. In your hearts, you know that.
Al Horford ain't going to live forever. He's not immortal. He's not immortal.
It seems like it.
It seems like
Kristaps is really good for them. Derek White is crazy good for them. Drew Holiday fits like a glove. Like, we love Drew just as much as they do. But, like, everything else being equal, I can definitely see Milwaukee taking out Boston. I can see Boston taking out Milwaukee. But it all comes down to Giannis. It really does. And, like, that's the sort of thing that a player as great as Jason Tatum is, as great as Damian Lillard is, like, Giannis is that guy. And if you have him, you always have a chance. And for at least a few more years, we have him.
Yep.
I think they can make the finals.
That's been the great disappointment of these past 2 seasons. Not even losing. I mean, of course that sucks, but to have such an electric player at when you reach that pinnacle where having the electric player counts, you're tuned in, you're literally just staring. What is this guy doing at all times when he's on the floor? Is not something a lot of teams have. Not even the Celtics have it to that level. I mean, the Jalen's kind of share that responsibility a little bit, but it's not the same. All due respect. So yes, having that singular player is just, it makes it more exciting, and it's a different kind of experience. So from your lips to the basketball gods' ears, let's hope it comes together. Well, that was beautiful. That was good. We hit it right 1 hour on the dot, which is perfect timing. Ran through all the questions. Thank you, Mitchell. I think we're going to switch over now to miscellaneous. We're going to go from the serious work of the X's and O's on the professional basketball court to the equally serious work of the X's and O's on the youth basketball circuit. We're going into the Coaches Chronicles. For those who don't know, Mitchell is a coach for, he was last season, his one son's team. Now, I think you told me both are going to be underneath your tutelage now. Doubling up. Okay. So I'm going to ask you this question first before you kind of give a little bit of background to the listeners and watchers. So first, what's one thing about being a coach that you know now that you didn't know the first time, your first go around as a youth coach?
This is embarrassing to admit it, but it turns out complicated instructions don't work with children.
What general age group are we talking about here?
Yeah. So my older son is 9 and a half. So he's going to be playing in a league of 4th, 5th, and 6th graders. So he's on the younger side of it, which is going to be a challenge for him. But he's actually been like playing at school, and like we play in the driveway. Like there's a lot of things he's been improving at. He's still like thin and wiry, just like I was at his age, and spastic, just like I was at his age. But like he's the kind of guy who maybe doesn't practice the way he should, but like he's gonna give it a go in the game. So I really appreciate that. My younger son is 5, and that is just going to be comedic in every angle, because there's nothing there except for the one kid that's somehow 4'6" at 5 or 6 years old, that's just able to effectively shack over everybody. And there was one season where I had that kid on my kids' team. And
awesome. That's a good cheat code to have. Yeah.
So much fun. That was great. Kingston, if you make the league in 10 years and this somehow comes up during somebody's like research of your basketball path, like I remember you, bud.
Yeah. Remember the little people, Kingston. When you make it the big time, remember the little people.
Man. But yeah, complicated instructions, like telling someone to dribble to a spot, whether you give that spot a name, like the elbow, or you point to it, like that's really all about they can do until they do it. And then they're going to look to you for what the next step is. Right. And so what I've learned is that you can't set them up like that. It is very much about habits. And so everything I've ever done with coaching kids on the basketball court has been to like every drill is a game, like a different type of game with a different goal, and try to make it fun. You make it silly, because that's what they respond to. They like that. Kids love positivity, and that makes their parents love it too, which makes my life a lot easier. And like that helps a great deal when it gets hectic, because that's the other thing too, is that turns out playing a game where you're playing as kids that you've not met before, and they're wearing a different color shirt than you are, and there's all these other adults that are telling you, okay, it's time to play the game now. Like that is not quite panic-inducing for the children, but like everything just goes out the window. Like that is so overwhelming. The environment, the noise, the parents on the sidelines, like there is so much going on in their little tiny brains. And so, yeah, they just revert to habits. So you build good habits, you make it fun, you stay positive, and, you can get through a season.
Yeah. Are you a one-man coaching machine, or do you have an elite staff around you of other parents, presumably?
So I've been actually very, very lucky that the last for my older son, the last 3 seasons, I've been able to have another parent that's on, their kids on the team too, volunteer. And that's been immensely helpful, immensely helpful.
Mhm.
And in my head, I want to be more collaborative and work with people more. Like, I don't want to take over and get tunnel vision. And then practice starts, and I absolutely take over, and I get tunnel vision, and I completely forget everything I planned about. Like, my notes, forget it. I'm not even looking at my phone. We're just going to improv this and just make it work, right? And I explained to myself afterwards, like, oh yeah, when this happened, I decided to do this instead because X, Y, Z, and it was working better for this kid. But there's something about it that my brain just kicks into overdrive, and I'm like connecting dots like a beautiful mind in terms of what works for the group, going from what to what. And I'm leaving these poor guys, because I'm generally coaching with people that are basketball fans, like they play casually, but they're not, they haven't, I'm not going to be pretentious and say I've studied the game, but also I have.
I'm gonna go ahead and clip that. That'll be the clip that I will aggregate out when I've studied the game. That's an awesome clip. All right, yeah. No, I know, but you. I mean, in a lot of different facets, I know. Like, it just kind of comes second nature with how much you've watched basketball, participated in it. Like, there's just levels to how much attention you've paid.
Yeah, to it. I feel, and I think this is a human experience. Like, everybody, like, so many struggles that people have are trying to communicate an idea or a concept, and the inability to effectively communicate that to your audience that causes so much stress and so much consternation, so much friction, right? And so with an audience that's developing children that don't have the fine motor skills or control of their limbs to dribble a basketball, even, no, I can't tell them to run a weak side cut to the basket and then a Spain action. Like, they're not gonna, of course, like, nobody's gonna know that. I said the words and I don't immediately know what that looks like, but I see it on TV, or I see a diagram of something on a whiteboard. Like, I can figure that out. And so tempering my expectations has been a big part of it, and really and truly emphasizing the positivity is really and truly the only thing that works. Because if it's not a positive environment, it is going to be a slog for everybody.
This is fascinating because I've done rec league volleyball for a couple of years now, and I've been named captain just because I'm the one that signs the team up.
Captain, you got a championship under your belt, so don't show.
We do. I didn't wear it, so it's fascinating because, like you said, like, the positive environment is so big. As soon as the tailspin starts, I mean, it's so interesting that it scales at such a small level, and then you just blow it up. It's like, well, yes, at the professional level, they're putting a lot more time in. They've had a lot more experience, but the same dynamics are all still at play. So it's very fascinating there. But like, the fact that you can take these principles and it doesn't matter the sport, it applies regardless. And again, it could be kids, it could be other adults in rec league. I'm sure you even experience it in your rec league, like basketball. Like,
very true.
It's just this adjustments that you constantly have to make. Have you, I don't know how deep you go in, but have you read any manuals, any books about coaching at all, or have you kind of done it mostly off of instincts of just experience, trial and error for what you've been doing?
So I can't say that I've ever sought out any formalized perspectives, and I haven't read any books or listened to any podcasts, or I haven't consumed media to try to improve my coaching.
Yeah,
at least not intentionally. I definitely watching sports or like reading other books or
listening to Doc Rivers TV interviews.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But you look at things through a certain lens, and you can kind of pick up these elements, those common threads that exist throughout all of these things. Like, I think it applies for professionals in the workplace too, and not just corporate jobs. Like if you're a carpenter or a plumber, or you work service staff in a hospital or sorting boxes at a warehouse, like a lot of the same dynamics still apply. They just look different because the environment's different. But I have, so you might have known this. This might have gotten shared at some point, but for years when I was growing up, basketball wasn't my first sport. I was a figure skater for over a decade.
Didn't know this.
I'm pretty sure it came up at one point, like on a staff call or something. But this is like
you know me. You think I was paying attention on those? Come on,
that's fair. I should know better.
Just kidding.
So anyway, I did figure skating for a very, very, very long time, and I'm not going to get too much into it because it's not something that I necessarily look back on fondly or with pride necessarily. I did learn a ton from it, and it's a part of who I am now. It's a part of my life experience. But I bring it up because having been around coaching for so long during my formative years, and experiencing it then and looking back on it and reflecting on it now, like I see so much of what goes into motivating someone, demotivating them, the games that people play with relationships, sometimes with a purpose and sometimes because they're being cruel. Definitions of success is huge for people. And it applies to children as well as it does adults of any background. If you have a defined goal and it's laid out for you, like this goal means you succeeded, that provides such clarity that I don't think can be replicated any other way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I've been around that so much. I'm not gonna say I'm naturally gifted at it.
Go ahead and clip that again, Juan.
Perfect. Do we get it? Do I have to do another take? No? Okay, that's good.
I think you're good. Yeah.
But like having that much experience, and people that have played basketball for as long, and you've had multiple different coaches, like they have it too. It's just one-on-one in the setting that I was in for as many years as I was, where there's literally nobody else, makes it things stick out.
Yeah.
Good and bad. Good. It's not all bad. It's good and bad. And so a lot of what I do when it comes to coaching, mentoring, leading, it's really all centered around those basic principles, like defining success, maintaining a positive environment, honesty, and transparency. And that just works. That like humans respond to that. Who knew? Mm-hmm. If you're not shitty to people, generally it works out.
So speaking of being not shitty to people, is there a Bucks coach, an NBA coach that, when after you have your fever dream in the practice and you come back to your senses and you say, I was really like X. I was in my insert name here flow. Is there somebody that you see a lot of yourself in when you watch them prowling the NBA sideline?
I do tend to get very animated. So
okay.
I mean, there's a lot of faces happening. So I think Mike Budenholzer and I share that characteristic.
Good habit building, positive environment.
Yep. And like me and Bud, like nobody's perfect, but yeah, I definitely I see some similarities there. But yeah, there's so much that goes into coaching a team of professionals that I've never come close to understanding. It's like I might have been just pontificating for 10 minutes about something that maybe gets to a tenth of what they actually have to do. Like, what do I know, right? I'm just some guy who moved to California and coaches his kids because I want to be involved in my kids' lives, Yeah. But yeah, there's definitely, I'll say this, last season for my son's team, my older son's team, because my younger son wasn't playing yet, it's a mixed league, so there's boys and girls, because they're young enough. And we had there were maybe a league of 10 teams, there were maybe like 3 or 4 girls. So it was like very, very heavily skewed male, which isn't a surprise. We had one of those girls on our team, and she was tiny. She was not timid necessarily, but like she wasn't putting herself out there as much as the boys were, which I think is a common occurrence. And like every practice, every time I saw her, like I always made it a point of getting on her level, like saying hello by name, parents by name, how you doing, talking with her, making sure I could hear her voice, making sure when she raised her hand when I was asking a question, she got called on. And when we do the name game to warm up, and she catches the ball to say her name, like I make sure that she speaks up so she can get herself out there and project it. Like definitely worked as much as I possibly could to build her up. And I could tell that she was frustrated because we went the whole season and I played her as much as I would play any other kid. And every time she got the ball and got a chance to make a shot, like I felt that excitement well up. And almost every single time, like it went way off and it just didn't work. Okay. Getting the shot up was good. I told her that every practice, getting the shot up is good.
Yep.
The last game, she got the ball and she scored. And I lost my goddamn mind because I was so thrilled for her. I was so happy that she made that basket. And she was like skipping down the court. Like she was overjoyed too. I'm pretty sure the stadium erupted. We're in a stadium now during this fever dream. But it was just easily one of my most fond memories coaching was that. I don't remember how we got started on this topic because I just went deep down that memory. I hope she plays again. I really do.
It's a beautiful thing when you have successes that are the culmination of a season's length of work. I mean, again, you just have it even as an adult. You know, we'll get to the end of the season, somebody will do something they've been working at all season. So like, that's awesome. That's great that you were able to finally, everything came together for you. But so then I have the final question on this. Going into this coming season, what's your overriding goal? What's your thing that, and it could be different for both the boys since it'll be obviously quite different levels for the for your younger son. It could just be try not to laugh too much. For your older son, what are your goals going into the season?
I definitely want, and of course, like I try to keep it even, but like deep down, I'm a parent. I want my kid to do the best thing for them, of course, because I try to be a good human, but I'm just like everybody else. Like I'm selfish.
Yeah.
For my younger son, I definitely want him to get his first basket in the game. Like I think that's going to be great. He's relatively tall for his age group, so like I think he's going to be fine.
Yeah.
Like he shares good. He can dribble okay for his age, so I think he'll be fine. But like getting him to make a basket in a game where he makes it and everybody cheers, like I think that's going to be really great. And so that by itself is success. Generally, with the young kids, the biggest goal as a coach is that everybody gets a shot, at least one shot they make during the season. That's the big thing with the young ones.
Okay.
With the older ones, because I think this is going to be the first year at his age where they're actually going to like keep track of the score on the scoreboard and like have standings, like win and loss standings. I remember when I played basketball in middle school, and I didn't play very much because I was a very late bloomer when it came to that. But like I took those losses hard, even the games I didn't play in for whatever reason. Like I took it hard. I want my older son to be able to go through that and like be content with having given it his best effort, and only take it hard if he didn't give it his best effort. You know what I mean? Like, of course, I would love to win every game and get to the playoffs. That's not realistic. But again, like getting everybody to the point where they reach success based on their experience and their skill level. Like that really and truly is it. That's what it's all about.
Well, you sound like a great coach to me, Mitchell. You can coach my rec league volleyball team anytime. We'll fly you in for a clinic. You can show us what's what and inspire the troops. I think it's beautiful.
I am rubbish at volleyball, but I'll do my best.
Wonderful. Well, this has been awesome. This has been great. I appreciate the time again. I will give you a chance here to plug where you're at. If you would like people to find you on the internet, if you would rather they not, that's fine as well. But if you would, where can they find you?
I mean, there's not really anywhere it's good anymore. Like I use Twitter, which I will call it. I'm not calling it X. More than I have to, more than I should, way less than I used to because it's bad. So no, I'm not going to plug Twitter because fuck Elon and everything he's doing with that platform. It used to be cool and now it's not. I mean, just go to BrewHoop. That's whatever.
Say, every couple of months, you'll find us in the comments or on the byline of an article every once in a while.
Yeah, just go to BrewHoop. You're gonna get better there now than you ever did when I was there.
Oh, come on now. He's too coy for his own good, folks. He's Mitchell Maurer. We really appreciate his appearance. Like he said, he already did have to sell him for me. We encourage you to like, subscribe if you're on YouTube, subscribe if you're wherever podcasts you get. Monday Morning Media Roundup. whenever we get into the season, the Wednesday weekly wrap up. Lots of great off-season content. Should the Hodag be the mascots instead of Bango the Buck?
Really quick. Incredible piece.
Incredible.
Piece by Morgan. That thing
Yes.
was tailor-made for September on a basketball site.
Extremely good stuff. Gabe Stoltz, he went to every Wendy's in Milwaukee County and tried a Junior Frosty in honor of the Bucks win you win deal that they have out there. Lots of great off-season content, off-the-wall content that you can always expect at Brew Hoop. And then, of course, as the season gets closer, more analysis, more expectations, more game coverage. We appreciate you tuning in, and we'll talk to you again very soon.